Howdy, folks. I'm Mark, and today I am joined by Jordan Leithart. Jordan, thank you for coming on back to the podcast and joining me for this short talk about video games.
Always happy to be here, Mark.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. And you are listening to Quick Play, so let's get right into it. So gaming history feels like it's kind of had a bit of a recent surge in seriousness in a way, particularly in the official sense. There have been plenty of books and documentaries and plenty of fan-created stuff like passion projects throughout the years. But lately we've seen just kind of a influx of like officially sanctioned projects coming from like the developers and publishers and console makers themselves. Like most recently we had the Nintendo Museum in Kyoto is big direct yet to open up. But there's also, you see these things like they call them interactive documentaries, I think, where it's like Atari 50 and Making of Karateka. Now Tetris Forever is coming out. All these are coming from digital clips. But Jordan, have you, like, what's been your own experience delving into gaming history? And like, do you have a favorite? I don't know what to call these. It's like, like, how do you capture all of museums and documentaries? Like, is it an artifact or gaming item or a historical item?
My experience with it is almost in the biographical side of it.
Okay.
So one of my favorites and kind of helped spur me into the industry was a book called Masters of Doom that chronologued John Carmack and John Romero and how they ended up together at id Software. Okay. And how they created Doom from that. And then what happened after that and like the split up after Quake and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it was a phenomenal story. Well written, probably a little bit like a little bit of historical nonfiction kind of thing, like a little bit of creativity in there.
Yeah.
But it's a phenomenal book, and it makes you like, I remember thinking that this was what the games industry was going to be like.
Okay.
Like this passion of people like when they first started id, they had 5 people, the 2 Carmacks, Romero, I think Sandy was in there, and maybe and another guy, and they rented a lake house in Louisiana. Okay. And literally just programmed, designed, created all day. And when they got tired, they would go out on the lake, ride around on the lake for a couple hours, and then when they got tired of that, they would go and play D&D until midnight. And then continue working, and then basically sleeping when they wanted to, eating when they wanted to. Like, it was just and I was like, this is awesome. I can't wait to get into the games.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was not like that when I got
in. Yeah.
Very corporatized by the time I got in.
Did you know you wanted to go into games while you're reading this, or did this kind of help push you that way?
That was when I was getting my bachelor's degree to try and get into games, my CS degree.
Okay.
So I had already kind of made the decision. I was like, I would like to try this. And then I was like, I need to read this book, and started reading the book. So in my experience, like I would love to experience more like behind the scenes. I love the old stories. You read them on coding forums about Naughty Dog has like had some amazing stories.
Okay.
Like, oh man.
Yeah.
So it's like for the computer nerd. I don't know if any computer science guys listen to your podcast or how many of them do, but
maybe some do.
There's a concept of overriding a buffer, right? Okay. So you can basically access memory you aren't supposed to be able to. And back in the PlayStation, I think it was PlayStation 2, but one of the Crash Bandicoot games had a game-breaking bug after the game had been put on disc.
Gotcha. Okay.
This was before patches.
Yeah.
So game, and like, this is to fix an expensive recall. The only thing that they could do was change the EULA at the beginning that Sony would then like update after the game had already been printed on the disc.
Okay.
So you have to go through that. And so they would overwrite the buffer on the terms of service that you have to click accept to go through, overwrite the buffer, found the address in memory that bug happened. And so they're able to live patch their game, quote unquote, live patch their game by overwriting the buffer in the EULA.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
that's wild.
So like my favorites are stories like that.
Yeah.
Like war stories kind of thing.
Gotcha. That's a great way to put it.
John Stotts, if you have never read his book about the creation of World of Warcraft vanilla, it's a phenomenal where he just has like screenshots. He was a level designer, interior level designer. So he built all the dungeons. So he has all these stories like screenshots of what the game looked like and spreadsheets and stuff like that he
Oh
just puts
man,
into his book, and it's like a documentary book of how World of Warcraft was created.
that's awesome.
And I highly recommend that book.
Okay, that's what was the name of that one again?
I don't remember.
Okay, but John Stott's
John Stott's.
World of Warcraft or something.
Yeah, I'll look it up real quick
Yeah,
because I should have come prepared.
All good. As you're looking through it, I feel like what I'd love is to like thinking about Nintendo's museum opening up, and like I have heard some feedback of like, man, I wish there was a lot more on the people of Nintendo. Like, are there any exhibits there that's like highlighting, like, we all know Miyamoto, but like everyone else involved in the early days, and kind of there, it feels like Nintendo's just very closed off in those war stories. So I'd love to see more of those from them.
I think that might be a part of Japanese culture, though.
Sure. Yeah.
Where it's like you don't have like that cowboy kind of attitude that us Americans get. It's like,
Yes.
we know the name of Gabe Newell and all this type of thing. It's like, I don't honestly couldn't tell you who first designed Pokemon. It's like,
Sure.
I know Miyamoto,
Right.
but I can tell you like Ken Levine with BioShock. I can tell you Gabe Newell with Half-Life. I can tell you like the Carmack and Romero with like, so they have like this almost notoriety that Japanese culture does not seem to enjoy. So
yeah, more of a communal aspect to it.
yeah. John Stott's book is The WoW Diary.
Nice. Okay. Very nice. I had a book growing up that was like, I don't know where it was from, or I don't remember the name of it. But it was mainly on like kind of the 18-bit, 16-bit era. I remember that being like the first like video game history book I bought, and like still too young to really understand what it was. Like just one of those like kind of semi coffee table books that someone wrote at some point, and like was not that big a deal. But also early on in my marriage, because my wife is from the Dallas area, we went to the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, which is a cool spot. I remember, so my wife being from Dallas, like growing up, like when we went to visit her parents, I was like, hey, can we go check out this museum? And she's like, where is it? It's like it's in Frisco. It's like that. She was very confused of like, Frisco's like cow pasture. What are you talking about? And that's the level of growth happening in Dallas of just now suddenly Frisco is like a very techie place. But being there, I really feel like I never got the grasp of just the breadth of video game history. Like I know Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft and like, yeah, Sega and Atari, but they just had even just simply like a wall of controllers, and like half of them were things I had just never heard of.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It kind of just blew my mind of how many different consoles there were even before like the NES. And so that was, just kind of cool to get a sense of it. And it was, cool spot.
Well, it also makes you think it's like feel a little small because you're like, man, like all of these ones failed.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh boy.
Yes. Yeah, they had a playable ET for the Atari.
Okay, so you know the story of the ET.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that is what's like Nintendo, for all of its like there are potentially problems with it. I'm a big fan of Nintendo. I love what they do, but they do have some like not draconian but very controlling aspects to their IPs and stuff.
Yeah.
And but in the mid 80s, like it was almost necessary. The games industry was going to die if Nintendo didn't come in and do that. Now, obviously, there was some PC with Ultima and like you had Apogee and stuff like that doing their thing. But
sure, just
that's crazy.
Massive amounts of trash needed to be chopped away.
It does feel like we're reaching that point again.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Like with that, do you feel like why? Am I wrong in this? But it feels like there is just this big significant push now. Like, is that why do you think it's happening now? Is it too late? Yeah.
Well, I think that you're looking at a two-part question. Are you referring to like remakes and remasters, or are you referring to just like holding on to a piece of history and kind of like a showing of, hey, look at what we used to be able to do, kind of thing?
Kind of the second one, but like a big part of that is kind of remakes and remasters, especially in the way that like the Atari 50 example I gave, where they're remastering a bunch of old Atari games to kind of get them back in the hands of people, but largely more of like kind of upholding these pieces of history.
Yeah, I think that there is a sense of like the consumer. Boy, I shouldn't say it like that. The player.
There you go.
Players are generally pretty nostalgic about things. And so there's a sense of like, everyone says you can't step in the same river twice, like that whole proverb. But there is like, but you can kind of like, if you played a game as a little kid and you go back, you do kind of zip back into that thing. You're like, oh yeah, I feel it. Like I go back and play Super Mario World every now and then, and it puts me back to when I was, I think 3 or 4. Like in my, maybe I was 5, and my dad and my granddad were playing Super Mario World, and they sent me to bed. And I remember sitting there being like, I have to go to bed, and they're playing this awesome game downstairs.
Yeah.
And so, but I do get zipped back into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Of this, like, so, and holding on to that, like, I think there's a lot of good that comes from look at where we came from and look at where we're going, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would. I don't think I would keep track of everything, and I don't even know if I would keep track of Game of the Years, because I don't think that Game of the Years, like the IGN Game of the Year stuff, does a good job of actually showcasing forward progress in the industry.
Gotcha. Interesting.
But I do think like I think it's a good idea to like pick a game and have it like almost in the Smithsonian. You have like this like, hey, yeah, this is important.
Right. Is there, like, as a game developer, what are the things that, like, in that process you think is actually, like, worth preserve? Like, talking about there are some games that you want to stay, like, the ones that should be in the Smithsonian, but kind of what part of the process, like, would you want to highlight?
I think it could be anything. Like, honestly. So some games, well, let's take like Redfall. I think it was Redfall.
Yeah. The one that
like pure destructible environments back on, I think it was Redfall.
Are you thinking Red Faction? There you go. It's like, yeah, Redfall's the vampire one that flopped.
Yeah, no, let's not remember Redfall. Let's forget about that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to get canceled for that comment. So the Red Faction, like, absolutely. So I would say something like that, where it's like ahead of its time, Battlefield, like 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think 5, maybe 5 did it, but like, had these fully destructible environments afterwards and relied on this kind of thing. It's like we see a lot of, I would call it iterative projects nowadays, where it's not innovative, not pushing the needle. It's just like, we're here and like we know that this kind of works, and so we don't have to push any further for that.
Yeah.
And I like my game Oracle Maze does not push the needle at all either. Like I'm fully in that that same boat. But there is like, but the ones that do, I think should be celebrated, should be remembered, and they could be art style, like they could be technologically advancement. They could like Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't think, like, my personal opinion, I think Red Dead Redemption 1 was better. But from a graphical, technical perspective, and like the things that they did with the snow and the footprints and like how everything reacts to the environment and just the sheer beauty of the graphics of it, absolutely what I would say. Sure. Even though I think it's a worse game technically than the first one.
In a sense of like kind of going back to your Game of the Year comments, like maybe games of the year are not really the ones to remember. It often feels like those are the ones that are the shining culmination of everything that's come before, but not necessarily the ones that are like moving forward.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. So, I mean, like, we on your quarterly thing, like, we had this whole conversation, and I think I was the one that put Doom up there as the like, I think so. one of the best, or like
the 12 games. Yeah.
12 games. Like, and I still firmly stand by it. It's like, I don't think that the industry would not be where it is without Doom.
Yeah.
And so
that's still on the list, right? I can't remember now.
I think so. It slowly got knocked down.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I'm with a bunch of Nintendo fanboys. I forgot. But like, so you had these games that just do something crazy like that. So, here's a good example: EverQuest, like the first EverQuest. Mm-hmm. I would say, yeah, let's put that, like, I also think physical copies should be in museums a little bit more. There's something just good I think, about a physical copy.
Yeah.
And despite it, if you look at my Steam library, I don't have a lot of physical copies. But there is something very good about it. It's like, but EverQuest did something that was new.
Yeah.
And they introduced it. And then I would say also Vanilla WoW should be in there, even though it was
Yeah.
kind of iterative. But that from a technological standpoint, the ability to run from the southern point of the Eastern Kingdoms to the northern point of Eastern Kingdoms without a loading screen is unheard of. Still,
Gotcha.
like you play an MMO today, you can't do that.
Huh. Okay.
And then we play modern WoW, you can't do that.
Gotcha.
Like their expansion zones have gotten smaller and smaller.
Interesting.
And it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
where did all this? And so suddenly, it's like, yeah, this is a shining example of where video games should be. I don't know if I answered your question about what types of things, because I think it could be like code could be absolutely something.
Sure. Yeah.
But then design, like, a game like Outer Wilds, which is in my top 5.
Yeah.
Like from a code perspective, they did some really cool things, but nothing necessarily like mind-bendingly innovative.
Sure.
And if you go and listen to some of the documentaries, they're really interesting. But
I
from
didn't know there were. I need to go check that out.
a world-building perspective
Yeah.
and how everything fit together, and my favorite thing, and I think this sums it up, is like all the fans of Outer Wilds who want other people to play Outer Wilds don't tell anyone about Outer Wilds.
Right.
They just say, go play it.
Yeah. Go try it
And
out.
like, that's unheard of in any entertainment.
Yeah. It's even funny of like trying to send a trailer for Outer Wilds. Like, well, this gives away like a kind of key mechanic that like is like, I knew it going in, but like imagining if I had not known what happened the first like hour of the game, that would blow my mind.
Yeah. I go back and I watch random streamers play through it every now and then.
Nice.
Just to be like, hey, and like the ones that don't know what's going on. Anyway, so
Yeah.
to get back to this museum side of it, I think that it's a very good thing for us to like try and like showcase this stuff. And I don't think that there should be necessarily a like I would say some sort of threshold impact of some kind, because you don't want to like there's a lot of what do they say, like I think it's something like 10 games are released a day on Steam now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's like not all of those games should be in the museum.
Right.
It's like some of the really bad ones maybe, like
yeah.
no offense to Concord, but like they're doing stupendously bad for a multiplayer game.
Right.
It's like maybe this should be, hey, don't go this direction for whatever direction. I haven't even looked into it much, but whatever direction it went, don't go this direction.
Yeah. I think it was like just their market research was like 8 years too late because that just took too long to make and they missed the boat. And like also even kind of what you're saying too of like the reason that classic rock is so good is because all the crap has been forgotten to history. Like there's not every game is worth preserving in a sense.
Right.
So I think it's, yeah.
So I don't know if you listen to Jordan Peterson at all, but he has a phenomenal, like, are you familiar with the Pareto principle?
Yes.
80-20 rule?
80-20 rule. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has one, and that's the square root rule. And for like a company, it's the square root of your employees equal 50% of your output.
Huh.
Okay. And so if you have 4 employees, 2 people do 50%, which works out fine. If you have 100 employees, 10 people are doing 50% of your output, and the other 90 are doing the rest of the 50%.
Gotcha.
So as you grow bigger and bigger, your 50% gets smaller and smaller as a ratio.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is, very interesting.
Yeah.
But what gets weird about it is things like, of all the composers in the world who have composed any kind of music in history, the square root of the number of composers are the ones that we even know about.
Huh.
Okay. And then the square root of that number are the ones that are good, that we think are good. And then of the composers, so like Mozart, the square root of all of the pieces that he's done is the square root of, say he's done 100, no, he's done more, but say he's done 100 pieces.
Yeah.
People only listen 50% of the time, 10 of those are being listened to.
Interesting.
So as you go from games, you're like the square root of number of games come out, 50% of the players are playing in that square root. And the ones that are really good are the square root of that, and so on like that. And it's just it gets narrower and narrower and tighter and tighter. And
Yeah.
I think those are the ones that we should remember.
Yes. That's a good way to put it. I like that. Well, our time is short, but before we go, we got to know, what's a game or a series that you want a documentary of, or a book or whatnot?
Oh man. I would love to have a deep dive interview documentary style thing with Miyazaki from Software, and just going over the whole Soulsborne
Yeah.
legacy and just hearing, like, I've heard a little bit of it, of how Demon Souls was supposed to be scrapped. He took it over, brought it to something kind of not exactly lied, but like tweaked, the approach to investors. They had no idea what was going on, and it became a cult, like a cult hit,
Yeah.
and saved the company. And now that's what they make.
Yeah.
I would love to hear like the whole process and where they learned from Demon Souls into Dark Souls, into Dark Souls 2, into Bloodborne, into Dark Souls 3. It's like just following along.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be fascinating. I was kind of thinking about, like, I'd love kind of an in-depth, like, even director's cut of Super Mario World. Like, again, that's one of my favorites. But I was thinking of like having a re-release of like Mario All-Stars, but with more like behind the scenes stuff. I don't think they had cameras rolling when they were making those games, but like anything kind of like just digging into what was on the cutting room floor, like what got, like Yoshi was playing for Super Mario Brothers and couldn't really be realized until Super Mario World, and kind of like stuff like that, where it's like, it'd be awesome to even have a director's cut version of like Mario Brothers or Mario World, which I say this, I don't think this is ever going to happen, but it'd be really cool. I would enjoy it, and I would buy it.
You're that Nintendo. One guy won't buy it.
Yes, I will buy it. Don't you worry. Please, Miyamoto. Well, Jordan, as we wrap up here, we got to know one name, one game. What are you playing?
I just finished Tunic.
Nice.
I think people should play it.
Yes.
I think it is one of the most ambitious games I've played. One of the ones where a developer literally put the entirety of how someone will view the game on the player. And I applaud that bravery and ambition. I don't know if it will always hit with every player, but I think they did a really good job. And people who hits with will really, really like it. And the people who it won't hit with probably will not like it very much.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Speaking of hitting, I did often turn on invincibility with that game, because I think that game would actually be better without combat, is what I'll go into. But
I thought that the last boss was too difficult of an uptick.
Yes,
in difficulty.
That's a great game. That's a great pick. I have been playing some Splatoon 3, which is fine. It's Splatoon. It's a good time.
I never got into Splatoon.
The first two, I'm borrowing Splatoon 3. I don't know if I actually would buy it at this point. The first two were always like, I guess I'll try it out. And then like, oh man, this is awesome. I love this. And then now Splatoon 3, I feel like I'm a little bit too far behind, where it's just all the little kids are destroying me whenever I hop in. It's like, I don't know what's going on anymore.
At least they don't have mics on the Switch.
Oh, yeah. I would turn that off in a heartbeat. Well, Jordan, thank you again for joining me. Where else are you out on the internet? You got a game coming out at some point.
If you want, so you can find me at RealJarnod on Twitter. More importantly, if you go to Steam and wishlist Oracle of Malaise, it will help me out tremendously.
I will link that below too.
Thank you.
Direct link. Well, thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on the major podcasting services. You can find us on the proper socials at Quick Play Pod, and let us know what's your favorite historical gaming experience, museum, book, movie, whatever you got. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks. Bye.